Today I'm sharing some of my favourite podcasts with you guys. This has been very highly requested. I've mentioned podcasts quite a bit and a lot of people want to know my favourites and the ones I would recommend you listen to if you've never listened to podcasts before, or if, like me, you're a podcast addict and always trying to hunt down a new really good podcast to listen to. I am going to do a separate video just about business podcasts because I know not everyone is going to want to listen to those types of podcasts and it's a very specific audience who would, so those will definitely be coming. I have way more business podcasts that I listen to, so stay tuned for that one. So the first one I wanted to mention has been my favourite lately, and that is Ladies Who Lunch. Ladies Who Lunch is basically girl talk for the modern woman. That's how I would sum it up, because as you'll know, if you have these really fun, interesting chats with your best friend, things can be fun and light-hearted but also quite deep and meaningful, and you can really debate and discuss the important things and controversial things, and that is exactly what they do. So they talk about all sorts of issues relating to women, sex, relationships, career, politics, literally everything you can think of, but in a really fun, interesting way, and it really makes you think afterwards. I find myself like nodding or agreeing with them or shaking my head in the car, like trying to like chip in, because it just feels like you're having a conversation with a group of friends, and I just love the dynamic of it. It's a really, really enjoyable podcast for me. I look forward to it every week. Next is a slightly controversial one, or a taboo one, and this is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I love it and wanted to talk about it because I am a very sex positive person and I do enjoy discussing sex with my friends, and I have loved Dan Savage's Savage Lovecast podcast, which is basically a sex podcast but with some politics thrown in. So it definitely is a controversial one. It covers lots of taboo topics, the kind of things that you wouldn't discuss at the dinner table. He starts off with some sort of insight into the politics of the week. So obviously at the moment he's talked a lot about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and then he gets into the sex advice basically, and he just gets listeners to phone in and ask questions relating to their sex life, whether it's, you know, their personal things or more relationships, open relationships, monogamous relationships, gay relationships, straight relationships. Literally everyone and anyone can phone in and ask a question, and they just talk about sex for an hour and he gives them advice. The next podcast is called Motivate Yourself, and it's by a British guy who's a psychologist in the UK. If you love really looking internally to improve yourself and be happier and live your best life, you will love this podcast because he really like digs deep into questions to ask yourself and things to think about, and I always come away from this podcast like thinking about how I react in certain situations. I just find his advice so helpful, and because he's a psychologist, he really talks about it in a tangible kind of informational way that you can actually take his advice and relate it to your life and actually have it make a difference, rather than just hear the advice and not even do anything about it, if that makes sense. So really like that one. The next one is Happier by Gretchen Rubin, and you'll probably have heard of her book The Happiness Project because that was hugely popular, and if you've not heard of it before, basically The Happiness Project was Gretchen's attempt to improve her life, like one small change at a time. So she dedicated one task to each month throughout the year, or one like focus, one new habit and everything, and kind of documented her journey. So if you love that kind of getting organised and creating new habits and all those little like fun but helpful, motivating like life hacks, then you will love this podcast, because that is pretty much all they talk about. Every podcast they have like a try this at home tip, really interesting, like genius life hack, whether it's about organising or remembering something or just something that we can all improve on, but it's that easy that you could literally start doing it tomorrow. So I love the try this at home tip. So if you're that kind of person who makes lists and is always like, right, how can I improve my life? How can I be more productive? How can I do this? How can I do that better? You will love this podcast. This podcast is for you. And if that is you, you are my spirit animal, because that is me as well. And finally, my last but definitely not least favourite podcast is Gillian Michaels, and the Gillian Michaels show is great if you are a fan of Gillian. I just find it a really interesting, funny podcast. It's so hilarious. They have the best discussions, and it just always gets you thinking. It's one of them podcasts that, like, in the first half of the show you're literally laughing your head off, and in the second half you're like crying because they've started talking about something really serious and emotional. So it's just another really great, healthy, like living your best life related one. So those are my top 5 lifestyle podcasts. If you love podcasts, let me know your favourites in the comments below, and give this video a thumbs up if you want me to share more favourite podcasts in the future. Like I said, stay tuned for my favourite business podcasts, because that will be coming soon. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you are new, please subscribe for more motivational lifestyle stuff like this, and also some health and beauty content thrown in. So I will see you in my next video. Bye!